What is the sound of tea before it is poured?
Empty Zen, 24 Koans. Excerpts from Empty Barrier by Mumon. Introduction by Professor David Christopher Lane. Narrated by Richard de Britannia. Introduction. My first encounter with Zen was when I was quite young. I happened upon Alan Watts's eminently readable, even if idiosyncratic, introduction to the subject entitled The Way of Zen from 1957, which inspired me with the no-nonsense approach to spiritual practice. It eschewed linear ways of thinking for a more experience-based approach via Zazen, or sitting meditation. Later I became enamored with the famous haiku poet Matsuo Basho, whose laconic poetry struck a chord within me about eliminating the mind of clutter and seeing, hearing, and smelling nature as it arises without too many preconceptions. Later, when I was in my 20s, I became friends with Herb Joseph, who travelled to Japan in the early 1960s to formally practice Zazen under a Zen master. He spoke of its intense rigour and routine. I found his recollections to be inspiring, even if quite challenging. However, the secret to Zazen, or any deep meditational practice, is no expectations. Just sit and be. As Blaise Pascal wisely opined in Pensée back in the 17th century, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Of course, there are good evolutionary reasons why we suffer from a chattering mind. Our subjective awareness, with its amazing ability to reflect upon the past and imagine all sorts of scenarios in the future, has provided us with a wondrous survival tool which other creatures lack. Because of this, our brain sends out an almost endless stream of ideas, thoughts, and fantasies that invariably goes unchecked until we pay attention to the thinking torrent. When we do so, we become aware of how little control we have over our monkey minds. The word Zen is derived from the Chinese word Chan, which in turn comes from the Indian term dhyan, sometimes translated as focused attention or meditation. This is instructive since the heart of Zen is direct experience with reality as it arises, without unnecessarily superimposing upon it with human concepts and beliefs. This is why the phrases no mind, cloudless sky, and empty luminosity have popular currency in Buddhist literature. It is not that the Zen practitioner gains something by his or her sitting, but that rather the mind's ceaseless wanderings become undone and is allowed to return to the source from which it arises. Thoughts are like waves on a windy day in the ocean, emerging and cresting here and there. To the degree that we get caught in their wake, we live within their bounded realms, and to the degree that we let them arise without our involvement, we are freed from their tidal pull. Thoughts don't stop their continual dance. They are our biological inheritance, evolved to present us with an array of possibilities about the past and the future, and how we should navigate accordingly. But the Zen monk chooses not to be its dancing partner. She lets the dance proceed unencumbered, but becomes a witness to the promenading, realizing quite simply that one doesn't have to participate. Be still and know the play and its purpose. One of the unique contributions that Buddhist masters, particularly in Japan, have developed is the introduction of a koan. which is usually a paradoxical statement designed to usurp the rational mind. It is also a method to prompt a spontaneous satori, or awakening. It does this by demonstrating the utter absurdity of believing that as humans, we somehow grasp reality by thinking about it. Yes, we certainly know some aspects of the cosmos and our place within it, but therein lies the clou of the problem. We tend to conflate our mental maps for the territory itself, forgetting that all we ever know is but an infinitesimally small granule of the totality of existence. The enlightened Zen master uses a koan precisely like a skilled surgeon uses a fine instrument, to cut away the cancer that is injurious to the patient. At first, the paradoxical statement is understood literally. The mind attempting to grasp its meaning in a linear and rational way is confounded since it defies logic. Then the aha moment arises when the mind is stopped in its permutations and comes at rest at its place of origin. A delightful ananda, or bliss, spontaneously permeates throughout one's being, and one's time as a disciple, as a student, no longer. She is the present. She is the sunyata, or the clear void brightness, unconditioned, though within a condition. The following koans by Mumon come from the famous text known in English as the Gateless Gate, which was translated by Nyogen Senzaki and Paul Reps. I have only chosen 24 koans for this edition, and I have left out any commentary on them. I have consciously done this, since I think the reader will benefit more by approaching these paradoxical jewels without explanation. May these be seeds for further enlightenment. One. Joshu's dog. A monk asked Joshu, a Chinese Zen master, "Has a dog Buddha nature or not?" Joshu answered, "Mu, no thing. Nani mo nai." 2. Hyakujo's fox. Once, when Hyakujo delivered some Zen lectures, an old man attended them, unseen by the monks. At the end of each talk, when the monks left, so did he. But one day, he remained after they had gone, and Hyakujo asked him, "Who are you?" The old man replied, "I am not a human being, but I was a human being when the Kashyapa Buddha preached in this world. I was a Zen master and lived on this mountain. At that time, one of my students asked me whether or not the enlightened man is subject to the law of causation. I answered him, the enlightened man is not subject to the law of causation." For this answer, evidencing a clinging to absoluteness, I became a fox for 500 rebirths, and I am still a fox. Will you save me from this condition with your Zen words, and let me get out of a fox's body? Now, may I ask you, is the enlightened man subject to the law of causation? Hyakujo said, the enlightened man is one with the law of causation. At the words of Hyakujo, the old man was enlightened. "I am emancipated," he said, paying homage with a deep bow. "I am no more a fox, but I have to leave my body in my dwelling place behind this mountain. Please, perform my funeral as a monk." Then he disappeared. The next day, Hyakujo gave an order through the chief monk to prepare to attend the funeral of a monk. No one was sick in the infirmary, wondered the monks. What does our teacher mean? After dinner, Hyakujo led the monks out and around the mountain. In a cave with his staff, he poked out the corpse of an old fox, and then performed the ceremony of cremation. That evening, Hyakujo gave a talk to the monks and told him of this story about the law of causation. Obaku, upon hearing the story, asked Hyakujo, "I understand that a long time ago, because a certain person gave a wrong Zen answer, he became a fox for 500 rebirths. Now I want to ask, if some modern master is asked many questions and he always gets the right answer, what will become of him?" Hyakujo said, "You come here near me, and I will tell you." Obaku went near Hyakujo and slapped the teacher's face with his hand, for he knew this was the answer his teacher intended to give him. Hyakujo clapped his hands and laughed at this discernment. "I thought a Persian had a red beard," he said, "and now I know a Persian who has a red beard." 3. Gute's finger. Gute raised a finger whenever he was asked a question about Zen. A boy attendant began to imitate him in this way. When anyone asked the boy what his master had preached about, the boy would raise his finger. Gute heard about the boy's mischief. He seized him and cut off his finger. The boy cried and ran away. Gute called and stopped him. When the boy turned his head to Gute, Gute raised up his own finger. In that instant, the boy was enlightened. When Gute was about to pass from this world, he gathered his monks around him. "I attained my finger Zen," he said, "from my teacher Tenyu, and in my whole life I could not exhaust it." Then he passed away. 4. A beardless foreigner. Wakuhan complained when he saw a picture of a bearded Bodhidharma. "Why hasn't that fellow a beard?" "Nani mo nai." 5. Kyogen mounts the tree. A Kyogen said, "Zen is like a man hanging in a tree by his teeth over a precipice. His hands grasp no branch, his feet rest on no limb, and under the tree another person asked him, 'Why did Bodhidharma come to China from India?' If the man in the tree does not answer, he fails, and if he does answer, he falls and loses his life. Now, what shall he do?" 6. Buddha twirls a flower. When Buddha was in Girdharakuta mountain, he turned a flower in his fingers and held it before his listeners. Everyone was silent. Only Mahakashpa smiled at this revelation, although he tried to control the lines of his face. Buddha said, "I have the eye of the true teaching, the heart of nirvana, the true aspect of non-form, and the ineffable stride of Dharma. It is not expressed by words, but especially transmitted beyond teaching. This teaching I have given to Mahakashpa." 7. Joshu washes the bowl. A monk told Joshu, "I have just entered the monastery. Please teach me." Joshu asked, "Have you eaten your rice porridge?" The monk replied, "I have eaten." Joshua said, "Then you had better wash your bowl." At that moment, the monk was enlightened. 8. Ketu's Wheel. Getsuan said to his students, "Ketu, the first wheelmaker of China, made 2 wheels of 50 spokes each. Now, suppose you remove the nave uniting the spokes. What would become of the wheel?" And had Ketu done this, could he be called the master wheelmaker? 9. A Buddha before history. A monk asked Seijo, "I understand that a Buddha who lived before recorded history sat in meditation for 10 cycles of existence and could not realize the highest truth, and so could not become fully emancipated. Why was this so?" Seijo replied, "Your question is self-explanatory." The monk asked, "Since the Buddha was meditating, why could he not fulfill Buddhahood?" Seijo said, "He was not a Buddha." 10. Zazen, alone and poor. A monk named Zazen asked of Zazen, "Zazen is alone and poor. Will you give him support?" Zazen asked, "Zazen?" Zazen responded, "Yes, sir." Zazen said, "You have ZEN, the best wine in China, and already you have finished 3 cups, and still you are saying that they did not even wet your lips." 11. Joshua examines a monk in meditation. Joshua went to a place where a monk had retired to meditate and asked him, "What is what?" The monk raised his fist. Joshua replied, "Ships cannot remain where the water is too shallow." And he left. A few days later, Joshua went again to visit the monk and asked the same question. The monk answered the same way. Joshua said, "Well given, well taken, well killed, well saved," and he bowed to the monk. 12. Zazen calls his own master. Zazen called out to himself every day, "Master." Then he answered himself, "Yes, sir." And after that he added, "Become sober." And again he answered, "Yes, sir." And after that he continued, "Do not be deceived by others." "Yes, sir, yes, sir," he answered. 13. Toksan holds his bowl. Toksan went to the dining room from the meditation hall, holding his bowl. Seppo was on duty cooking. When he met Toksan, he said, "The dinner drum is not yet beating. Where are you going with your bowl?" So Toksan returned to his room. Seppo told Ganto about this. Ganto said, Old Toksan did not understand the ultimate truth. Toksan heard of this remark and asked Ganto to come to him. "I have heard," he said, "you are not approving my ZEN." The next day, Toksan delivered an entirely different kind of lecture to the monks. Ganto laughed and clapped his hands, saying, "I see our old man understands ultimate truth indeed. None in China can surpass him." 14. Nansen cuts the cat in two. Nansen saw the monks of the eastern and western halls fighting over a cat. He seized the cat and told the monks, "If any of you say a good word, you can save the cat." No one answered, so Nansen boldly cut the cat in two pieces. That evening, Joshu returned, and Nansen told him about this. Joshu removed his sandals and, placing them on his head, walked out. Nansen said, "If you had been there, you could have saved the cat." 15. Tozan's three blows. Tozan went to Mumon. Mumon asked him where he had come from. Tozan said, "From Sato village." Mumon asked, "In what temple did you remain for the summer?" Tozan replied, "The temple of Hodi, south of the lake." "When did you leave there?" asked Mumon, wondering how long Tozan would continue with such factual answers. "The 25th of August, answered Tozan. Mumon said, "I should give you 3 blows with a stick, but today I forgive you." The next day, Tozan bowed to Mumon and asked, "Yesterday you forgave me 3 blows. I do not know why you thought me wrong." Mumon, rebuking Tozan's spiritless responses, said, "You are good for nothing. You simply wander from one monastery to another." Before Mumon's words were ended, Tozan was enlightened. 16. Bells and Robes. Mumon asked, "The world is such a wide world. Why do you answer a bell and don ceremonial robes?" 17. The 3 calls of the Emperor's teacher. Chu called Koxi, the teacher of the Emperor. Called to his attendant, Oshin. Oshin answered, "Yes." Chu repeated, to test his pupil, "Oshin." Oshin repeated, "Yes." Chu called, "Oshin." Oshin answered, "Yes." Chu said, "I ought to apologize to you for all this calling, but really, you ought to apologize to me." 18. Tozan's 3 pounds. A monk asked Tozan when he was weighing some flax, "What is Buddha?" Tozan said, "This flax weighs 3 pounds. 19. Everyday life is the path. Joshu asked Nansen, "What is the path?" Nansen said, "Everyday life is the path." Joshu asked, "Can it be studied?" Nansen said, "If you try to study, you will be far away from it." Joshu asked, "If I do not study, how can I know it is the path?" Nansen said, "The path does not belong to the perception world, neither does it belong to the non-perception world. Cognition is a delusion, and non-cognition is senseless. If you want to reach the true path beyond doubt, place yourself in the same freedom as sky. You name it neither good nor not good." At these words, Joshu was enlightened. 20. The Enlightened Man. Shogen asked, "Why does the enlightened man not stand on his feet and explain himself?" And also he said, "Is it not necessary for speech to come from the tongue?" 21. Dried dung. A monk asked Mumon, "What is Buddha?" Mumon answered him, "Dried dung." 22. Kashypa's preaching sign. Ananda asked Kashyapa, "Buddha gave you the golden woven robe of successorship. What else did he give you?" Kashyapa said, "Ananda." Ananda answered, "Yes, brother." Said Kashyapa, "Now you can take down my preaching sign and put up your own." 23. Do not think good. Do not think not good. When he became emancipated, the 6th patriarch received from the 5th patriarch the bowl and robe given from the Buddha to his successors, generation after generation. A monk named Emyor, out of envy, pursued the patriarch to take this great treasure away from him. The 6th patriarch placed the bowl and robe on a stone in the road and told Emyor, "These objects just symbolize the faith. There is no use fighting over them. If you desire to take them now." When Emyor went to move the bowl and robe, they were as heavy as mountains. He could not budge them. Trembling for shame, he said, "I came wanting the teaching, not the material treasures. Please, teach me." The 6th patriarch said, "When you do not think good, and when you do not think not good, what is your true self?" At these words, Emyor was illumined. Perspiration broke out all over his body. He cried and bowed, saying, "You have given me the secret words and meanings. Is there yet a deeper part of the teaching?" The 6th patriarch replied, "What I have told you is no secret at all. When you realize your own true self, the secret belongs to you." Emyor said, "I was under the 5th patriarch many years, but could not realize my true self until now. Through your teaching, I find the source. A person drinks water and knows himself whether it is cold or warm. May I call you my teacher?" The 6th patriarch replied, "We studied together under the 5th patriarch. Call him your teacher, but just treasure what you have attained." 24. Without words, without silence. A monk asked Fuketsu, "Without speaking, without silence, how can you express the truth?" Fuketsu observed, "I always remember springtime in southern China. The birds sing among innumerable kinds of fragrant flowers. Every day is a journey, and the journey itself is home." Matsuo Basho.
What is the sound of tea before it is poured?